All right, welcome to your deep dive. We know you want to up your art description game, get a little more sophisticated with it, and lucky for you, we've got this podcast script all about that.
It's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so we're diving deep into it. So get ready. By the end of this, you're going to have a whole toolbox of terms to go from, oh, it's blue to that cerulean just evokes such melancholy.
It's true. And the source is really spot on when it says it's not just about sounding smart, at the gallery opening, though that's definitely a fun side effect.
Of course, who doesn't want to sound a little smarter?
It's about unlocking a deeper appreciation for the art.
I like that. Deeper appreciation.
When you can describe it, when you can articulate it, you're not just passively observing, you're actively engaging with the art. And that changes how you see things.
Okay, I'm all for deeper appreciation, but honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm missing something obvious. Like, what am I supposed to be noticing?
That's where the nuts and bolts of description come in handy. Let's start with color, for example. The source gives us this whole array of terms. It's like crimson, cerulean, all these great words.
Sounds like a paint sample catalog.
Exactly. But it's not just about the fancy names. It's about understanding the emotional impact of color, how color makes you feel.
Okay, so it's not enough to say, like, oh, that's a pretty shade of teal. I need to figure out what that teal is doing to the overall feeling of the piece.
Yes, precisely. Like, think about the difference between, like, a really vibrant blue, almost electric, and then a muted, dusty blue.
Ooh, I see where you're going.
The source emphasizes how the tone plays a huge role. That vibrant blue, that might be energizing. But the muted one, that could create a sense of calm or even sadness. You can use that when you describe a piece.
Okay. I am already starting to see how this goes beyond just memorizing a list of fancy color names. Now, the source also talked about texture, and I was particularly struck by the example of impasto. I mean, it even sounds textured.
It does.
But seriously, I've seen that in, Van Gogh's work, that thick textured paint. It's like the sunflowers are about to burst out of the canvas.
That's the power of impasto, and the source makes a brilliant point. Even when the paint isn't physically thick, artists can create something called implied texture.
Implied texture? That sounds fancy.
It is, but think of it this way. How a drawing can make a smooth surface look rough by using techniques like cross-hatching. They're playing with light and shadow to trick our eyes.
It's like those 3D sidewalk chalk drawings where the ground looks like it just drops away.
Yeah.
So if I see that in a painting, I can actually comment on how the artist is creating the illusion of texture.
Exactly. And by pointing that out, you show that you're not just looking at the surface, you're understanding the techniques.
Okay, and then there's art styles. Full disclosure, I've always been too embarrassed to ask what cubist actually means. So thank goodness the source cleared that up for me.
It's one of those terms, right?
It is.
People throw it around. It can be intimidating, but the source makes a really great point. Knowing different styles, it's not about sounding like an art snob. It's about understanding the choices that the artist is making. So recognizing a work as cubist, for example, gives you insight into how they're approaching representing reality. They're not trying to create a perfect image. They're breaking things down into these geometric forms.
So if I see a painting with those like fragmented shapes, instead of just saying like, oh, this looks like a Picasso, I can actually talk about how the cubist style is being used to represent the subject in a totally unique way.
Precisely. You're showing you get it. You're showing a deeper understanding. Now, the source also provides some really helpful tips on commenting on art in general, which I think we should get into.
Yeah, this is where I always feel like I trip up, Trying to give feedback without sounding like I have no idea what I'm talking about, but also not like I'm writing a dissertation on it. The source talks about being specific, asking questions like, is there an art to talking about art?
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot between thoughtful observation and then also genuine engagement. And I really like the source's advice about focusing on just one or two really strong points that resonate with you. You can be insightful without overwhelming the person that you're talking to or the artist.
So instead of giving like a laundry list of every single thing that I noticed,
Yeah.
I should just pick out the things that really, really struck me and then like dive deeper into why they caught my attention.
Exactly. Let's say you notice a particular brushstroke technique, and it creates a sense of movement in the painting. You could say something like, the way the artist uses these swirling brushstrokes, it just really brings the scene to life. It's like I can almost feel the wind.
Oh, that's good. I'm already feeling a little more eloquent. But what about abstract art? That's where I really feel out of my depth. The source mentions using the analogy of a storm, like describing feelings rather than concrete objects.
Yeah, and that's a great starting point because with abstract art, a lot of times we're responding to the composition, the colors, the textures. Those evoke feelings even without a recognizable subject.
So I don't have to pretend like I see a hidden bunny rabbit in the swirls of paint. Like I can say, this makes me feel anxious, and that's a
Yeah.
valid starting point.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about connecting with the art on this kind of visceral level. The source gives us a nice framework, actually. Start with the composition. Is it balanced? Is it chaotic? Is it tense? Then consider color and texture. Are they harmonious or jarring? And then finally, bring in your personal response to all of that.
Okay, so for example, I could say something like, the way the artist uses sharp angles and these contrasting colors, it makes me feel a sense of unease, like I'm in a precarious situation, even if I can't really explain the abstract shapes themselves.
Exactly. You're analyzing those elements and then connecting them to your emotional response. So you're showing that you're engaging thoughtfully with the work. But I do have a question for you. Don't you think that focusing just on emotions with abstract art could be too subjective? How do we know, like, we're not just projecting our own feelings onto the canvas?
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I guess there needs to be like a balance between, acknowledging what the artist is trying to do and also our personal interpretation of it.
That's the beauty of discussing art. It's not about finding the one right answer. It's about exploring different perspectives and deepening our understanding through dialogue.
So even if my interpretation of an abstract piece is different from somebody else's, it doesn't mean that one of us is wrong. It just means that we're having a conversation and engaging with the art on a deeper level.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by sharing our perspectives, we'll discover something new, either about the artwork or even about ourselves.
Wow, this is really eye-opening. I'm starting to see how describing art is less about being right and more about having this meaningful exchange with other people. But before we get too philosophical, I'm curious. What else did the source have to say about describing art? It talked about how describing art isn't the end goal. There's this whole other level, and it's surprising. It's about making art.
Ah, yes, the source makes this connection very subtle but powerful. Even if we don't think of ourselves as artists, like with a capital A, just trying it out, doodling, sculpting, whatever, it actually changes how we see other people's art.
Wait, so you're telling me my stick figure drawings are contributing to my art journey? I'm not just doodling to avoid work.
Think about it. When you try to mix colors, when you are struggling to get that shape right, you suddenly understand the choices that an artist makes so much better. The source isn't saying we all need to become master painters, but that hands-on experience, it builds this empathy for the creative process.
Okay, that is so cool. I used to love playing with watercolors when I was a kid. Maybe I'll dig those out again. But even if I don't create some masterpiece, at least now I can talk about one with more authority.
And confidence. The source reminds us you don't have to sound like an art history textbook. You don't have to use big words all the time. Be genuine, say what you really feel. That's what makes talking about art fun, both for you and whoever you're talking to.
It's less about, look how much I know, and more about, hey, let's geek out about this cool thing together.
Exactly. That passion, it's contagious. And the source's final point about how the best art descriptions make you want to see that art yourself, that really stuck with me. It's not about showing off, it's about making other people curious too.
Yeah, like you're not just a critic, you're almost like a guide, leading people into this awesome experience.
Exactly. Describing art well, it's like being a fantastic museum guide, right? You're not reciting facts, you're opening a door to discovery.
This deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I've got a whole new vocabulary, but also a whole new way of thinking about art.
And remember, it's a journey. The source encourages us to keep exploring, to never stop learning. The more you look, the more you see. And the more you try to put it into words, the more you understand.
Well said. Thank you for being my guide on this little art adventure. And to our listener, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have, and that you'll join us again for the next one. Until then, keep looking, keep learning, and most importantly, keep creating.